I found myself thinking, well, this is kind of a weak spot. And from a practical, where's the fall color approach, it kind of is. But then last night I come out here and we had just wonderful stars because there's no light pollution up here. And so we had the richness all through this sky and with these trees making this really nice horizon. So I started thinking compositionally, well, you know, just a photo of stars isn't good enough. It's just a deep field photo of stars. What I ended up doing was right next to the trailer there, setting up and doing a panorama, just about 3 shots wide, taking it from here around like this, probably about 120-degree radius, looking out towards the starry night. And of course, in the dark, I mainly went above all of this and just kept the lower areas, kept the trees, so we had that rich landscape pictorial foreground and then all these amazing stars in the background. I had to shoot at ISO 12,800 to really get the sensitivity and the detail, because if I went more than about 10 seconds, the stars would start to blur and now I'd go to star trails. I've talked about that technique before in terms of which direction do you want to go, which one do you want. But the beauty here is, you know, we took a scene, first of all, that was at a glance, oh, this doesn't seem like much. I was able to use the equipment that I had at my disposal to do something really beautiful. And this image is going to look great on the wall. There's some noise in it because it was at 12,000, but this sensor does remarkably well at 12,000, and I can deal with a little noise, a little grain in the finished image, as long as the visualization's there, and as long as it's not too much, as long as I have the detail about here, and I'm setting up at night, trying to do a panorama, trying to dial it in. Okay, so I didn't have it set up before dark. So I used the advantage of a high sensitivity sensor, cranked it way up, and just did some experimental shots. And as soon as I started seeing all the depth of the stars that was out there, I was just like, wow, okay, we have to do something here. Now I get a basic composition. I leveled the camera, I leveled the tripod, I get it so I can do my 1, 2, 3 and get a nice wide panorama with lots of resolution, okay? Now I have a few things to face. First of all, I'm doing a fairly short exposure so I can get the points of light, but I have to move fast in between those exposures, because even in the 10 seconds between each exposure, 20 seconds really, because of the long exposure noise reduction being on, I basically have 20-30 seconds between each exposure. And so the stars are moving a little bit between that. So I kind of did the first test sequence and I'm like, wow, this is really cool. And then I'm finding some deficiencies in it, going in and looking at the images. So then I come back out and I start doing it again, and I have some real trouble dialing in the focus because it's so dark. And so I tinker around and remind myself that, oh, I really need to take each individual lens and spend more time knowing where infinity truly is at each focal length, so I'm not struggling with it when I have to manual focus and basically having to try one and then try the next. Know your equipment. And I'm dealing with a brand new camera here that I'm getting to know very quickly, but my lenses I've been using for a long time. There's no excuse for me not knowing every infinity point of my lenses. So that's something I'm going to be working on, so that when I'm focusing in the dark, when I do have to do that, I'm going to get there quicker. Now, the next was optimizing the ISO. I really wanted to go down to 6400, but the 12,000 was showing such depth out there, and I really could not go above 10 seconds. So the stars were going to kind of blur, in my opinion. So I wanted that 10 seconds, and I decided, all right, we got to go for ISO 12,000, 10 seconds, f4. Maybe I was at 3.5. And finally got it all dialed in, got the focus dialed in, and the Milky Way was right where I wanted it to be. And everything looked great, so I did the sequence. And then I went in and started working on it, and I didn't have to do a lot. Of course, we're dealing once again with a night scene, so yes, I had to brighten up the lights and bring that contrast and color back in, as you often have to do with night and long exposures, because they'll end up being a bit gray and flat. You got to bring out the punch. I did 3 things in the making of this image. The first was building that base visualization, all right? I knew I wanted a points of light image. That meant high ISO and fairly low shutter speed relative to star trails. Then I did some high ISO tests that would be unusable noise, but gave me a picture of what I was seeing and what the potential was out here. So that saved me some time, and it got me to my visualization quicker. Okay, now I'm looking at this image and I can say, here's what I want. So the first thing we do is we plan this visualization. The next thing was to get the technical aspects in order. Make sure the focus is dialed in. Make sure that I'm optimizing the ISO. Make sure that I'm doing what I want to do and that the technical aspects in the camera, the capturing of the light and the exposure are going to be right. I have a visualization now in my mind's eye. I need to in camera get it right. In this case, in the dark, one of the things that I ran into was my focus just being slightly off. And there's nothing to buzzkill like getting a great image and then you go into work on it and you realize that it's not in focus. So I took my time, and it was annoying and it was cold outside, and I messed with that focus until I got it where I wanted to, because I was running the lens wide open for the sake of light. So I needed to really make sure I dialed it in correctly. And then the third step in the process, once you visualize, once you get it right in the camera, the third step is taking your time and really getting it right in post-production so that you can take an image that you did right in the camera, use the tools that you have available in post-production. And this is what I want to mention. I actually processed it, and then I went and stitched it, and it looked good, and then I'm like, oh no, I need to do better than this. So I came back and I redid my noise reduction because I wanted to get as good of a raw file as I could. So I'm working in Lightroom with the noise reduction and with the different tools, optimizing the light, trying to maximize the quality. See, I'll spend as much time on that raw file before I export and stitch or post-produce in Photoshop or anything like that. I want to get as much quality as I can from that raw file, especially with a high ISO image like this, where I have a lot to lose if I do it wrong, where artifacts can come into play, where I can end up with more noise than I need. So I would tinker around. I really dialed in the noise reduction directly on the raw file in Lightroom, and I can do some more noise reduction later, but I wanted to get an optimum balance on that raw file. Then I went back in and I took it again, stitched it, and did the final process. But I went through this a couple of times because I would look at the stitched image and think, oh, I need more detail. I got a little bit too much noise. So I guess what I'm getting at here is, we talk about the keys to image quality, and the final key to image quality, everything else needs to be done right beforehand in the camera. But that final key is your post-process, and don't be afraid to take some time in that post-process and really finesse it. Get in there one-to-one, look at this image and look at that image and do some comparisons and then try it. And ideally, I only want to export and do post-processing once in Photoshop, but on this I have such a good image, so much potential, that I experimented and tried to find the way to maximize that noise. And what I ended up doing is a medium noise reduction in Lightroom, a little bit of color noise reduction, a little bit of sharpening, and a general process just to bring out the light, and then taking that into Photoshop, stitching it together, then bringing back the final image and doing some final light post-production, and if I need to, some final sharpening and noise reduction, but really optimizing that file to get what I want. And I'm really thrilled with the result. From this here, just an empty patch out in the forest, to this. Look at what we got. This is 3 images stitched together. It's about a 50 megapixel file. Quite a bit of overlap on the images. I didn't need super wide, super crazy. I just wanted lots of detail and lots of light, and to be able to catch that full width and then go in and work it and crop it down to the narrow width that I needed and just really make it sing. And I think we got that here. So another situation of using the 6 keys to image quality, knowing our lens, knowing our sensor capabilities, knowing what the light is around us, what the scene is around us, and what's out there to work with, and taking it, making it, or wait for it, and utilize the beautiful light of the stars in the sky that was out there to get a really great image. And I'm really excited about this one and how it's going to look on the wall. It is, well, just look for yourself. I'm really thrilled about this image.